So today I wanted to talk a little bit about retro game upscaling, specifically for audio and video collections, of course. And it's been a pretty hot topic as of late, with a lot of newer technologies coming out every so often. And I've been asked a few times about, why do you upscale? Should I upscale? What's the point of upscaling? And all that, and to be honest with you, there's a lot of videos out there that go into the hows, the hows, the whys, but I just kind of wanted to put a little bit of a personal take on that, because as a longtime retro game collector, it fits what I like to do with retro gaming, and I can fully admit right now that it's not for everybody. I know that there's a lot of people out there that say upscaling is the best way to get audio and video from your consoles. Well, yes, to a certain point, but is it the best way for you to play that game? Depends on your preference, but just want to give my little thoughts about that as well. But yeah, as a longtime collector, I had shifted back probably about 20 years ago. I started really seriously collecting, starting with the stuff that I wanted to get in the 90s, and around through the Dreamcast era. So I started getting PlayStation and N64 and Super Nintendo, and just stuff that I had never really played at that time. And at the time I was really ramping up my video game collection. So yeah, it probably lasted for about 10 years or so. So this is around 2010-ish, where I got into TurboGrafx and, a little bit more PlayStation 2 and whatnot. But anyways, I've been a retro game collector for a little while. And I hit a certain point where I got to a junction where I pretty much filled out the collection that I wanted. The point of my collection really for me was to, again, get the games that I really had wanted at that time or previously. So Sega Saturn, stuff I just couldn't, we couldn't afford at the time, or we just couldn't get into. I wanted to get them part of my collection, especially at the time. As a Sega fan, Sega games were really inexpensive, or they had a great value. A lot of people were straight up throwing them out. And then we're going towards Nintendo for a long time, so I was able to easily get into and kind of fill in a lot of the little spaces of my Sega collection. Start to build up my Saturn collection, getting into Sega CD, just a lot of that stuff. And I was very fortunate to be able to strike while the iron was hot, so to speak, and be able to get a lot of those games while they were not as sought after. So once the prices started going up, and honestly I started not having as much room at that time, I kind of held back my collection a little bit. I didn't want to start to really get into the fillers, like just to collect, to have a complete collection. I know some people that's their goal. That's fine, that's totally cool. If that's what you want to do with your collection, great. For me, it was more of, do I want to play this game? Yes? Let me add to my collection. And again, more at that time, I was buying games, and if I didn't like it, I would probably trade them in, or trade them to somebody else, and and get something more that I wanted. So throughout the entire time, that's kind of my goal. And then I, about mid 2010s or so, I started slowing down my collection and saying, well, I've kind of got what I want. And at that time, I started seeing a lot more content about upscaling. Now, for those of you that don't really know what upscaling is, it's really getting an audio and video signal, hopefully as cleanly as possible, into a higher resolution or a higher video output for maybe a more modern display. So let's say you're playing a video game that is originally at 240p or 480p, or some lower resolution, and you have a device or a set of technology that would then, you know, be able to upscale it to 720p, 1080p, through various ways. There's lots of different ways that that you're able to accomplish this. Now, of course, for those of you in the know, that if you start with a garbage signal and you upscale it, usually it's garbage in, garbage out type thing. It's kind of like trying to take a small picture in Photoshop and make it a poster. It gets really nasty looking. So being a Sega fan, I got really interested because there was this technology I had not known of, which was RGB SCART output from Sega consoles. At the time, I had only been using composite, maybe S-Video at best. And then Dreamcast, of course, came out and had VGA support. I'm like, wow, this is pretty cool. And that was something that right out of the box, being from the US, was really enlightening to see that this type of audio-video connection of RGB SCART, especially for a Sega Genesis, Sega Saturn, whatnot, was actually something that was fully supported inside the unit without having to actually, you know, modify the console. You know, it was, you bought the proper cable and then you had to connect it properly in order to get that signal. So of course, not to go through the entire history of it, but for that I looked into essentially a connector that went from Sega to RGB SCART to HDMI, right? Start with a cheap one. You know, as I went throughout the years, and the technology got better and I wanted to invest a little bit more money into it, I started looking at better options, because you can go with the cheap, you know, Amazon or eBay special where you can get RGB in and then it comes out 1080p, but it's not, there's a lot of lag, there's a lot of delay, it's not very clean, there's a lot of problems with it. And of course you have lots of different scalers out there by now. 2021, you have the OSSC, you have the FrameMeister, you have Retrotink products and whatnot. So there's a lot of great solutions out there. But that's kind of, once I stopped really going gung-ho with my video game collection, I started wanting to play these games on higher resolution displays versus, you know, a regular tube TV with composite cable. I was more interested of, okay, how can I get the best video and audio output natively from the system and then be able to display on my modern display, partially for you know, I really didn't and I still don't have room for a big tube TV, which I do enjoy. I do enjoy having those, but just because, you know, it's what you grew up on and it's very nostalgic, and a lot of games have technologies built into them to really be optimized for that kind of display and look really, really nice, have a very good quality to it. Well, anyways, I really went down that rabbit hole, eventually got an OSSC, and that was kind of where I really decided to get more into it. But I also, one reason I wanted to get into an upscaler was because I was really into recording video. Now, there's a lot of different capture cards out there, there's a lot of different technologies out there to get a signal from composite, component, all the way up to recording. But for me, the key really was, in as few steps as possible, how do I get the signal from the game console, split it, one to the TV, one to a game capture card, and both be really acceptable audio video connections, the best I could probably get at the time. So for me, that was kind of the whole point of why I got into upscaling and why I got into it, was playing original consoles, outputting the best audio video possible, being able to record it, stream it, and watch it on my TV at the same time. That was pretty much the reason why I went ahead and wanted to get into it. Now, is that for everybody? No, not necessarily. I know a lot of people that are into upscaling, and it's great to do that, to be a part of the upscaling community and be all for having the best cables possible, modding your system to have full RGB output or HDMI output directly from the system. That's great. That's awesome. Is it the only way to play? No. Are you doing it wrong if you play any other way? No, not at all. So that's, I feel like I wanted to kind of put my opinion out there because there are a lot of people that I've seen, at least vocal people, that say, you know, if you're not trying to get the best audio video output of your system, you're straight up doing it wrong. Like if you're staying with RF, or if you're staying with composite. Now, do I prefer that on most consoles? Will I put an RF cable in my Sega Genesis? I could, if I wanted to. But for me, I enjoy, you know, getting the full RGB signal, native signal out of it, and taking that signal and seeing what I can do with it. So for me, it really was, how do I streamline that process? How do I get it to look good as I would like it to look on my TV? But the nice thing about upscaling is I've got it to a point where I've got a lot of different connections going into upscaling. So the way I've kind of ended it is I'm currently running a Retrotink 5X, and I have a few different connections, and some of y'all might think this is probably the wrong way to set this up, and that's okay. I mean, this is just the way I have it set up, where I have some consoles using RGB SCART, mainly my Sega Genesis, my Sega Saturn, and now my Sega Dreamcast going into the Retrotink 5X via SCART cables. Originally on the OSSC, I had the Dreamcast using a VGA output, of course. And I enjoyed that, but for me, if you get the right SCART cable, they have some that have the 240 and 480p switch. You can you know, use either mode, and it'll upscale to 1080p and beyond. That's how I have that connected. I also have component cables connected to my PlayStation 2, which I also use to play PS1 games as well. I have it connected to the Nintendo Wii, so I can play obviously Wii games, and I can play GameCube games running from that. And I also have component going from original Xbox. Perfect. That's the way I've got it set up right now, and that's the way so far I enjoy playing those consoles from those connections. Now I also have a couple ways I just started, now that I have the Retrotink, and I'm able to use composite signal because the OSSC didn't have that port built in to add VGA component and SCART built in. But now I was like, well, let me see how it looks when I run composite. So right now I have my Super Nintendo, I have my N64 and my GameCube with the Game Boy player. Using, like, I'm hot swapping the different the Nintendo composite port going out to that. And honestly, it looks really good just from composite. I'm really excited and jazzed to see some new firmware updates, to see how it really makes the signal, you know, even though it is technically not the best input, you know, garbage in, garbage out type of thing, it does a really good job at handling the composite signal. So I'm gonna give it props, and I haven't quite upgraded those cables yet. My GameCube does not have the digital out, so I'm pretty much, unless I get another GameCube, which I kind of don't want to do, kind of limited at my output resolution. Funny enough too, I have a 3DO and a Jaguar, or Jaguar, or however you want to say it, Atari Jaguar. Atari Jaguar, however you want to do it. I've got the 3DO connected to S-Video. I believe that is the highest native output that I have connections for right now, either composite or S-Video. Now that the Retrotink 5X also has S-Video, so it fits that really well for me. It looks pretty good. I know that there's different RGB mods for that and whatnot, but I'm not interested right now in modifying my console yet. But the funny thing is, the newest member of my retro game family, which is the Atari Jaguar, is running right now through RF. But you may ask, hey, how are you getting that RF signal to the Retrotink to upscale? Or are you doing that at all? When I first tested it, no, I just ran it to the back of my flat screen and it worked fine. It looked a little smeary, of course, because it's RF, but hey, you know what? Had the Atari 7800 system doing that as well, so I have no complaints. But I also have a VCR connected to my same TV because, you know, I like that type of format. I have a bunch of tapes. Sometimes I'll pop a movie in, or, you know, some old film that I just run across a thrift store for a couple cents, put it in there and have fun. But the nice thing is the VCR that I have has a composite in, composite out, and RF in, composite out. So you can plug in your RF signal from your Atari consoles or whatever else you have RF, and you can have a mono composite output to the Retrotink 5X. And yeah, as soon as I got the Retrotink in, I went through and I started testing everything, and it worked pretty nicely for what you put in for it. So I was actually pretty blown away at the results that you could get from RF going through a VCR going into the Retrotink 5X. Not ideal at all, but it works, and that's my current setup. So so anyways, there's a lot of great ways you can run your video games, right? That's just the way I have it set up, because for me it's the most streamlined. When I was able to one of the reasons why I went to the Retrotink 5X over the OSSC was for my specific capture card that I have. That's another step of the process. It wasn't really, it's an older capture card, and you know, some of the signals that came through in the OSSC, I'd have to tweak them. When I switch consoles, I'd have to tweak the setup quite a bit. And for the Retrotink 5X to be able to output a clean 1080p, you know, with anything that you throw at it, without having to worry about output resolutions being weird or mismatched or not being compatible with my capture card, that was kind of a big deal. And when I did that, I actually had an intermediate step to try to even the resolution out between the capture card and the OSSC. I had that cheap SCART to HDMI 1080p converter, and it added some delay. It made the resolutions a little bit more clean, but I did not like that. So I was able to remove that step by going the Retrotink 5X, and I'm super happy about that. So for me, it works a little better. Yeah, so I mean, that's kind of the way I play my systems, and I have them connected up right now. I have other systems as well that are not connected, like NES and whatnot, but I just, you know, it's just a space thing. I'm not the biggest NES player. I have TurboGrafx, stuff like that. I just don't have that connected yet. Again, you know, just space and how much I play the systems themselves. I'll go into kind of the pros and the cons for me for upscaling and my specific setup. One of the pros is it's a pretty compact setup, especially when I'm able to remove extra steps for components and whatnot. I'm able to do, you know, put everything into one box and then have that one box signal sent to TV, or split it to go to TV and capture card, and that's it. I'm happy. I'm very happy. It's very compact, especially the Retrotink 5X, being able to handle that. So I'm very happy. But that's one pro I would say of the Retrotink 5X. Another pro, amazing image and sound. You can tweak the settings, kind of like the OSSC. You can tweak them to really give you the output that you would like. The Retrotink 5X, really, I feel like it's a lot more plug and play, which is great for me. It's great for a lot of people. that you just want to get results. You just want to have a clean 1080p, not worry about, hey, am I going to be doing a 3x or 4x multiplier on this original resolution, and can my TV handle it? You don't have to worry about it. It's just 1080p, and of course you can go into other resolution settings that work really well as well. Upscaling in general, a pro of it is, you're starting to get into more 4K TV setups, and if you got living room setups or TVs that you just don't have component input anymore, you don't have composite input anymore, you don't have VGA input, you don't have for your European customers, European people, you don't, I guess, have as many SCART connections. I guess I've heard some of those SCART connectors are going away as well, which, depending on the way the TV handled them anyways, you may or may not like that. Anyways, it's just, it makes it work better with modern TVs and modern setups. So it's easier for you to play those old games. Another way you can kind of slice it to get away from that is go with some of these clone consoles that go automatically to 1080p or go 720p output, HDMI right out of the console. That's fine. Personally, I don't like to use those just because I prefer the original consoles and I prefer the audio and video from the original consoles. That's just me. So whatever floats your boat, right? Going into some of the cons of upscaling and running a solution that kind of like I have is, you really, in order to have the most optimal setup, you really need to plan out your every step, every route. So if you want to record, you got to factor that in. Do you have the capture card? Does your upscaler support the resolutions you're trying to capture? All the good stuff. Do you have the right connectors going from your consoles to your upscalers? So I would say the cons is it takes a little bit of time. Just take a piece of paper, draw it out, map it out. What consoles do you want to have connected to the upscaler? What cables do you need? So you can see if it's worth the money or not. It is kind of an investment in playing these retro games and having those experiences. So that's probably what I would do, and it is kind of a con because it's not truly plug and play. We're getting more to that point, but especially with the Retrotink 5X, it's making it significantly easier to just plug in whatever you've got and make it work. But in general, those are hard. Retrotink, you can't just buy it right now. There's waiting lists. There's, there's waves of these devices coming out. Some of these devices, like the OSSC, they're easier to find, but again, there's some more steps. There's a bit more tinkering. But yeah, one of the other cons is, especially over the probably 5 or 6 years I've been upscaling, there's been new technologies coming out, and you kind of figure out this, you might be ending up spending money multiple times to upgrade your equipment, whether you get a better capture card, you've just bought 2 capture cards over X amount of time, or you bought an upscaler now, 2 years down the road, a newer one comes out that does X, Y, and Z that you wish the old one had, and you end up buying the new one. You've just spent more money. So there's always that consideration of spending more money. It can add up, especially if you feel like you bought the wrong cable or you didn't get the right setup that you wanted to. That's why it's really important to map out exactly how you want your TV setup to go, and before you jump into upscaling, see, pricing everything out. Maybe you want to buy a couple things at a time. You want to upgrade your Sega cabling to your upscaler first. You wait a little bit of time, then you upgrade your Nintendo. That's fine. That's totally cool. But that's just something to think about. Definitely price is a little bit prohibitive if you want to upscale older consoles. So yeah, but again, just to kind of cap it all off, I know this has been kind of a rant, but for me, upscaling makes sense. Have I lost a sense of why I'm into retro collecting? Not really, no. It's all about the games for me. However you want to play the games. I believe I've mentioned this in a previous video. You can play them on a retro Pi. You know, you can play them on an emulator. You can play them through a mini console. You can play them on the original disc or cartridges. You can play them however you want. Whatever setup works for you, works for your budget. Play it that way. For me, upscaling was kind of taking what I grew up with and taking the hobby that I really enjoyed and kind of turning it up to the next level, getting that really good audio video presentation that I didn't know was possible until I got into upscaling. And for me, that's kind of exciting when I get to, you know, pop in a game like Sonic and now it's like super crisp and clear and the sound is great and it's full 1080p and it looks fantastic, you know. So for me, that's kind of, it's part of the experience. Playing these older games on this upscaled audio and video experience is really nice. It's really fun. There are some pitfalls, of course, and it pretty much is a rabbit hole that you can go down, and you know, I've seen people get lost. You know, they are not sure why they're doing it anymore. They're spending all this money upscaling and they're like, well, I don't have time to play. Well, I don't like these games anymore. You know, it happens, but I would say really, for me, it works. Upscaling really works. If I had to do it all over again today, would I? That's a tough question. That's a really tough one. If I started out square one, I would probably be gaming more on emulators, to be honest with you, or I would be buying original consoles, getting just like the EverDrive systems for them, or burning games, or, you know, for, let's say, Dreamcast, swapping them out with a mode so you can put them on the SD cards, loading them up that way, and yeah, maybe going from there and maybe upscaling from there. But yeah, I don't know if I would if I would do it all again, and, you know, with the library, buying up the library and going that deep into it. But for me, you know, I feel like that's the whole point of doing it, is getting the best audio video out from these consoles, having a great time, and hopefully being able to share that passion with y'all. You know, be able to stream, be able to capture footage, you know, while I'm making videos like this. And I get reignited with some of the past experiences that I've played. And some of the previous videos that I've shot were all able to happen because of the upscalers and because of the capture card that I have and whatnot. So you know, all of that's really possible through that technology, and I just love figuring stuff out like that. I love being able to piece it together. So hopefully some videos coming up, I'll be able to kind of show you what my current setup is and just focus on the games. You know, it's all about the games. That's what we're here for. Why I collect this stuff. You know, it's just because I love this stuff. I love to play it. I love to take it off the shelf, look at the box art, and, you know, relive those experiences or have new experiences with games I haven't played before. So for me, upscaling lets me do that in the shortest amount of time and be able to share that passion out with you. But at the end of the day, you game how you want to play, right? You play how you want to play. That's it. You don't have to invest a ton of money to do it. You know, if you want to, sure. But you don't have to. I don't want to be a gatekeeper. I don't want to have to say, you know, if you're not upscaling, then you're doing it wrong. You may as well sell your collection. No. Why? It just doesn't make any sense to me. You know, there's ways that I prefer to play. There's ways that, you know, I prefer not to play. Does it make it right or wrong? No. I think what we need now is less gatekeepers in this hobby, because there's so many barriers for playing games as it is, whether it's price of buying a console, price of buying the games you want to play. Like if I wanted to add Panzer Dragoon Saga to my Saturn collection, I think that ship has already sailed. So there's a lot of barriers for people that haven't gotten into the game collecting, as some of us have, that want to play these games, and there's enough of that. There's enough of that. Why add that layer of, well, now you're playing it in the wrong aspect ratio. Now you're playing it on an emulator. You're playing it on a Raspberry Pi. You're playing it on a Mister. I mean, whatever. That's okay. That's fine. Just have fun. Just have fun. I think what we need to do is, you know, show people through example that gaming is fun ultimately. Sharing our gaming experiences is also really fun. We can share how we used to game, for some of us old hats that have played retro games when they were new, and show some of these people, you know, what we prefer. That's great. Do you want to play it on a CRT? You want to play it on a Sony PVM? Fine, that's awesome. Show me that experience. Is it the only way to play? No. Can I afford a PVM display? No. And even if I could, would I really want to? It's not for me. So that's okay. That's okay. What we need to do is we need to kind of band together. We need to stand up and say, you know, let's make gaming, whether it's more modern gaming or more retro gaming, more accessible to people. And I'm still learning how I can do that in my own little corner, my own little way. That being said, gatekeeping should not be one of those things. Let people enjoy games the way they want to. Show people how you would enjoy your games, and if they want to enjoy them the same way, guide them down that path. You know, hook them up. Be like, hey, I'm upscaling, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm using RGB, I modded my system. Cool. If that's the way they want to do it, great. If not, that's fine too. But man, you know, I had a lot of fun, you know, talking about upscaling, and I'm having a lot of fun in this hobby. I feel like sometimes, you know, I don't have enough time to play. I don't have enough time to make videos and be able to express myself through this forum. But you know, the times I do get inspired to do it, and the times I do give myself time to make these kinds of videos and have this kind of outlet, I really enjoy it. I really enjoy all your feedback. I enjoy you all being around for the ride, and I can't wait to share more of my gaming experiences and my fun rediscovering and replaying some of my favorite games or new favorite games. So I really appreciate you being here for this video, and game on.